My best friend seemed to be pregnant, so I went with her to the hospital for a checkup. As we had just walked out of the obstetrics department, we ran straight into a SWAT captain on duty, and the moment my best friend saw him, her face drained of color. Crap. My brother. If he finds out I got pregnant before marriage, he'll kill me. Before she had time to think, she shoved the pregnancy report into my hand. Meeting the man's scrutinizing gaze, my best friend gave a sheepish smile. "I'm here with Susan," she said. "Her boyfriend is so irresponsible." The man looked over at me, and I dropped my eyes to the floor. Late that night, he appeared at my place, looking exhausted and hollowed out, his voice faintly trembling. "We've been together for 6 months," he said. "I've never even touched you. So whose child is it?" When Monica Brown stuffed her pregnancy test results into my hand, I froze for a moment. By my ear, I heard her low, pleading whisper, "Save me, save me, save me." When I came back to my senses, Keith Brown had already walked up to the two of us. The young nurses passing by stole furtive glances at him. Dressed head to toe in a black SWAT uniform, with his 186 height, his presence felt even more imposing. His features were sharply defined, and years of training had given his skin a healthy wheat-brown glow. He was pure, concentrated hormones. Keith must have been on duty somewhere nearby. Running into us at the hospital seemed to surprise him a little, too. "Hey, what are you doing here, Keith?" Monica chirped as she bounced over, trying to divert her brother's attention. Keith kept it brief. "A colleague got hurt. I brought him in." His gaze slid to the sign of the department behind us, the 3 characters for obstetrics standing out starkly. "And you're here for?" "A checkup." Monica's brain worked surprisingly fast at a time like this. "We meant to go to gynecology, but we went the wrong way and ended up in obstetrics." Instinctively, I tightened my grip on the pregnancy report and quietly hid it behind my back. His presence was so overpowering that I couldn't help sneaking a look at him. I was caught off guard when our eyes met, and my whole body went rigid. Just then, a nurse came out of obstetrics, smiled at us, and said, "You got your pregnancy report, right? The doctor is on the way. Please wait here for a moment." Keith's gaze dropped to me again, heavy with scrutiny and speculation. Monica and I have been best friends for over 10 years, so I know her well. I also know that the person she fears most is her brother. They grew up in a single-parent household. Their mother worked herself to the bone to support the two of them and barely had any time left to discipline them. Keith is 5 years older than Monica. From childhood to now, he has managed Monica more strictly than their mother ever did. When Monica was in middle school, her mother died of illness. From then on, Keith became her primary guardian. He is steady by nature, doesn't smile easily, and his methods are ruthless. When Monica's early high school romance was discovered, the teacher called him in. He was all politeness and warmth at school. Once they stepped outside, he dragged the boy in front of Monica. The boy was scared half to death, swearing over and over that he didn't like Monica, that he was only fooling around, that from then on he would walk the long way around whenever he saw her. That incident completely shattered Monica's fantasy of school romance. Keith knows very well how to kill without laying a finger, how to stab straight into someone's heart. And precisely because of that, even now that Monica has a job and a boyfriend, she still doesn't dare tell her brother. Their relationship is clearly stable, and her boyfriend even proposed to her a week ago, yet Keith is still in the dark. "He's busy with work and hardly ever comes home," Monica says. "Even if I wanted to tell him, I can never find the right moment. But I know that's not the real reason." She's afraid Keith will pull the same terrifying tricks he used in the past to test her boyfriend. She never expected to get pregnant this time. It was just once. Who knew once would be all it took? She's planning to keep the baby. She does intend to tell Keith about it, just not now. Right now is an absolutely terrible time. Out of sheer fear of her brother, Monica shoved the pregnancy report into my hands and blurted out, almost without thinking, "I'm here with Susan." Righteous indignation lit up her face. Her boyfriend, TSK, I don't even want to talk about him. Irresponsible scumbag. Total jerk. She got more and more carried away, completely oblivious to the way Keith's expression was growing darker and darker. His gaze shifted over and landed on me. It clung to me like something bone-deep and unshakable, making my skin prickle. Keith asked, sounding offhand, "She has a boyfriend?" "Of course," Monica said. "I've even met him." Keith fell silent. The air suddenly turned strange and tense. Just as I was about to suffocate from the awkwardness, another man in a SWAT uniform ran over. "Captain, Tim is awake." Keith's expression tightened. "I'll go take a look." The situation was urgent, he didn't have time to say anything more to us, and he turned and walked away. Monica let out a long breath of relief. When she turned and saw how dazed I looked, her eyes filled with grateful tears. "Susan, you are literally my savior. How about this, let's find somewhere quiet and I'll kowtow to you properly. Otherwise I'll never forgive myself." She made me laugh. I've taken the blame for her more times than I can count over the years, one more doesn't really matter. As she likes to put it, the whole point of having a friend is to have someone who'll ignore their conscience and still take your side. I poked her in the forehead. Enough. Go see the doctor. Sensitive as she is, she picked up on my mood and tried to reassure me. It's fine, you don't really know my brother. He won't take it that seriously. We just need to muddle through for now. I'll explain everything to him later. A nurse came out and called her name, and Monica went in with the pregnancy report. I stood at the doorway of the department, feeling a little dazed. I turned my head in the direction Keith had left, Monica's words echoing in my ears, "It's fine. You don't really know my brother." I couldn't help letting out a quiet sigh. Don't know him? I know him far too well. Monica and I went our separate ways after we left the hospital. Her boyfriend, Robert Jones, picked her up. They probably had a lot to talk about. I went home and took a nap, and when I woke up again, it was already getting dark. My stomach was growling, so I ordered takeout. I had barely watched a few minutes of television when the doorbell rang. So fast? Today's delivery was really efficient. I hurried over and yanked the door open, and froze on the spot. Keith was standing at my door. Out of his black uniform and in a simple white shirt, he looked a little less cold and forbidding. Maybe he had rushed over, there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead. He took a few deep breaths, then lifted his gaze to pin me in place. What, you're not going to invite me in? Monica has no idea that I actually dated her brother. We were together for more than half a year and only broke up a month ago. At first, everything I knew about Keith came from Monica. She complained that her brother was old-fashioned, cold-blooded, and brutal. And I believed her, mentally equating him with the terrorists he arrested. So I never dared set foot in her home. Until one time, when Monica and I went out to play and accidentally fell into an abandoned drainage shaft. The walls were slick and wet, we tried climbing out for ages and couldn't. We shouted until our voices were hoarse and no one heard us. In despair, we huddled together and cried. Then a voice suddenly came from above. Wow, already crying? You look terrible when you cry. Hey, are either of you hurt? I looked up and froze. I was 15 that year, and it was the first time I saw the supposedly vicious, demonic brother Monica always talked about. From then on, I understood that Monica's words came steeped in personal emotion and should never be taken wholly at face value. Back then, I was too young to know whether my heart was secretly waking up to love, or if I was simply curious about her brother. I started paying attention to him, consciously or not. Whenever Monica grumbled about him, I would deliberately ask a few extra questions, as if that could help me understand him a little better. When Keith graduated from the police academy, Monica said the place would be full of hotties and insisted on dragging me along to the ceremony. She got busy ogling handsome cadets, darting here and there, and I lost track of her almost immediately. But I found Keith instead. He was chatting with a few classmates on the field. His classmates teased him. Stop walking around with that stone face. You're not bad looking, and yet girls don't like you. Maybe think about why, huh? Look, all of us got gifts from girls, you're the only one who didn't. Keith, aren't you jealous? I stared at them, stunned. I don't know what got into me. I pulled the birthday present my parents had just given me out of my bag, ran over, and held it out to Keith. His classmates looked at one another, and finally one of them asked, Hey, little sis, are you even legal? I am. I just turned 18 yesterday. In the end, I don't think I helped Keith at all, I just got him pulled aside for a talk. Later, I snuck off to apologize to him. He wasn't angry in the slightest, just deeply puzzled. Can I ask what exactly you meant by giving me a pink stuffed toy? I had no idea how to respond. I can get you something else instead? I offered tentatively. No need. He actually smiled. Thank you. You made my day. I added Keith's contact information after that. And from that moment on, I started to truly get to know him. If I managed to win Keith over, it was all thanks to my reckless disregard for reality. 8 years went by, I confessed 7 times, and he finally said yes on the 8th. But the relationship didn't even make it to a full year before it ended. I was the one who brought up the breakup. There were plenty of reasons, but the only explanation I gave him was 3 short words: we're incompatible. Dragged back to the present, I looked at the man in front of me, embarrassment prickling under my skin. Right then, the delivery guy started pounding on my door. Hello, your order's here. I went over and brought the takeout inside. It was still piping hot, spicy mala soup, but this was clearly not the time to eat it. Swallowing my hunger and craving, I asked Keith, what brings you here? Keith's gaze was fixed on the takeout box on the table. This is what you're eating? I nodded, not seeing the problem. His voice dropped. You're pregnant and you're eating this? Oh no. I had completely forgotten about that. I stared at him, eyes wide. I was still trying to figure out how to explain without throwing Monica under the bus when he suddenly stood up and headed for the door. Where are you going? Grocery shopping, Keith tossed back as he yanked the door open and strode out. 15 minutes later, Keith was back. 30 minutes after that, he had 3 dishes and a soup on the table, meat and vegetables well balanced, nutrition fully accounted for. I was genuinely impressed by how fast he was. Eat first. Arms folded, Keith's voice was as cold and hard as ever. When you're done, we're going to have a proper talk. I was stuffed. When I finally lifted my head from the bowl, I found Keith watching me. Finished? Silence followed. I was the one who broke it. About the whole pregnancy thing, it's actually... Whose child is it? Keith's voice was not as steady as before. If you listened closely, you could hear the slight tremor in it. I froze for a second and lifted my eyes to look at him. He drew in a deep breath and repeated, whose child is it? We were together for 8 months and 4 days. I never touched you. So you and your current boyfriend already knew each other before we broke up? It took me a moment to realize what he meant. He thought I'd cheated on him, that I'd broken up with him because I was seeing someone else. And that this child had been conceived with another man while I was still dating him. I was instantly furious. So that's what he thinks of me? I glared at him, so angry I couldn't get a single word out. If you don't want to say, I won't press you, he murmured. He slumped back in the chair, looking a little defeated. After kneading his fingertips a few times and forcing his mood to settle, he raised his head and looked at me. Monica said he's irresponsible. So, he doesn't want this child, does he? What about you? Do you want to keep it? He changed the subject so quickly that my mind couldn't keep up. I was still tangled up in whether I should just rip the bandage off and tell him everything about Monica. It would be better than sitting here suffering on my own. But Keith mistook my brief silence for consent. It was as if he'd made up his mind about something huge. He stood up and slowly walked over to stand in front of me. If you're willing, we can go get the marriage certificate tomorrow. His gaze dropped, slowly landing on my stomach. I'll treat the baby as my own. Instinctively, I touched my belly. My first thought, ridiculous as it was that I didn't have a child in there, just all the food he'd cooked. My second thought was, has Keith lost his mind? Volunteering himself to be someone's bargain bin dad? My heart gave a tiny jolt, and I couldn't help sneaking a few looks at him. Keith's expression was serious, there wasn't even a hint that he might be joking. And that was when it suddenly hit me. Maybe Keith cared about me more than I'd ever imagined. Guilt surged over me like a tidal wave. I didn't want to lie to him anymore. Keith, actually. Beep, beep, beep. The keypad lock chimed. The only person who knew my passcode was Monica. Why on earth was she here now? My reaction was lightning fast. I grabbed Keith and shoved him into my bedroom. In her eyes, her brother and I were little more than strangers. If she found him here in my apartment, I would never be able to explain it clearly in that moment. Catching his stunned gaze, I blurted, a little breathless, your sister. The bedroom door had barely clicked shut when my front door was pushed open from the outside. I rushed over. You're here. Come on, let's go out to eat. I grabbed her arm, trying to drag her back out, but she didn't budge. She pointed at the food on my table. Didn't you just eat? Forget eating out. I came to grab my medicine. I shook my head at her furiously. But she completely missed my signal and muttered, the folic acid the doctor prescribed, I stuffed it in your bag and forgot to take it when I left. I stared at her, stunned. Why are you just standing there like an idiot? Monica gave me a puzzled once-over, then continued talking to herself. I don't know if it's the pregnancy or what, but I've been exhausted these past 2 days. The walls in my apartment are not soundproof. Monica didn't stay long. She grabbed her medicine and left. The front door closed, and the whole place fell into dead silence. I opened the bedroom door. Keith was leaning against the wardrobe, his eyes dark and unreadable. He glanced at me, then at my stomach. You're not pregnant. It's Monica. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded to himself and started toward the door. It's getting late. You should get some rest. Even if you're not pregnant, try to cut down on all that takeout. He paused, then added, I shouldn't have showed up so abruptly today. Sorry to have disturbed you. His tone was calm. But I could feel the storm building beneath that calm surface. I grabbed his arm. Monica didn't mean to hide it from you. The pregnancy was an accident. She only just found out. Her boyfriend is a good guy and he really loves her. I know you're angry right now, but please, calm down first. Angry? Keith gave a short laugh. I'm not angry. Then unclench your molars before you say that. Keith stepped out the door and strode forward a few paces, then stopped again. He turned back. If this whole thing was a lie, then what about you having a boyfriend? I didn't dare lie anymore. That's fake too. Keith was silent for a few seconds. Then, without a word, he turned and left. I worried about it for a long time. I texted and called Monica, but she didn't answer. At 11 that night, I finally got a call from Keith. "Is Monica with you?" My heart lurched. "No." "What happened?" On the other end of the line, Keith sounded so tired he could barely hide it. I said some harsh things, and Monica lost her temper too. "She stormed out about an hour ago and hasn't come back." I let out a sigh. Those two siblings, their tempers are just as stubborn as each other's. They never use soft words, every line goes straight for the lungs. It would be a miracle if they didn't end up fighting. I was worried about Monica too. "You look around near your place. I'll check the spots she usually goes to." "Okay." Keith's voice was a little hoarse. After a pause, he added, "Thank you." After hanging up, I called Monica's boyfriend. He said she wasn't with him. When he heard what had happened, he panicked at once. "I'll look around my neighborhood too." I threw on some clothes and hurried out the door. An hour later, I found Monica at a late-night food stall we often visited together. She was busy demolishing skewers. I sat down across from her. Monica looked up, saw me, and forced a smile. "I knew you'd be the first one to find me." Her eyes were red, she'd clearly been crying. I sent a quick message to Robert and Keith to let them know I'd found her, then tossed my phone on the table and snorted. "Well, look at you. All grown up now, running away from home." Monica lowered her head, chewing on a skewer, and said nothing. "Fought with your brother?" I studied her face. "Don't be too hard on him. You kept this from him for so long. Of course he'd be mad, finding out you're pregnant all of a sudden. I know I shouldn't blame him. I'm the one who did wrong." Monica sniffed. "But I still can't help resenting him a little. He's been controlling me in every way since we were kids. Any guy who tried to get close to me, he'd practically want to run a background check on their ancestors for 18 generations. I've had 3 boyfriends, and when they broke up with me, they all gave me almost the exact same reason: "Your brother is too scary. I can't handle it." I sighed. If they didn't have anything to hide, then even if your brother were the king of hell himself, there wouldn't be much he could do to them. "Robert seems like a good guy to me. Let your brother meet him and have a proper talk." Monica nodded. That was the plan. The skewers she ordered smelled too good, and I soon joined in. We ate and chatted at the same time. "Do you remember when you were a kid and almost got abducted by traffickers?" Monica froze and looked up at me. I pressed my lips together. "Your brother noticed in time. He grabbed the handle of the trafficker's van and refused to let go. They dragged him for over 10 meters before the neighbors rushed over and rescued you. Your brother's arm and leg were both broken, but the very first thing he did when he woke up in the hospital was look for you." These were things Keith never had the nerve to tell Monica himself. But when he was dating me, he'd once opened his heart a little. I always felt that if anyone needed to hear those words, it was Monica. "Your brother has seen taking care of you as his responsibility since you were small. He's afraid you'll be lied to. He's afraid you'll get hurt. After Aunt Brown passed away, he couldn't pull himself together for a long time, but for your sake, he forced himself to stand up again. Monica, you're the only family he has left. So sometimes, even if the way he loves you isn't the best, try to cut him some slack. Your brother is also a first-time brother." Monica's fingers tightened around the bamboo skewer until her knuckles turned white. She stared down at the table, quiet for a long time. Just when I thought she wasn't going to respond at all, she finally spoke. "I know. Honestly, the moment I walked out, I regretted it. I hid this from my brother, he had every right to yell at me. But you know how I am. I'd rather die than lose face. I couldn't bring myself to turn back, so I came here instead." She sniffed and glanced up at me. We held each other's eyes for a few seconds, then both burst out laughing. When we'd finished all the skewers, she let out a satisfied burp. "Susan." I stuffed the last lamb skewer into my mouth. "I don't think I ever told you about almost getting abducted when I was a kid." "You did. You just forgot." "Really?" Monica scratched her head. Then, as if something had just occurred to her, she suddenly smiled. "Do you know what I was thinking just now while you were talking to me?" I looked at her curiously. "I was thinking, you kind of sound like my sister-in-law." She broke into wild laughter. "Isn't that horrifying?" I did not dare respond to that. I gave a couple of awkward chuckles and fell silent. "I'm gonna hit the restroom," Monica said, getting to her feet. "Wait for me." She headed into the nearby mall. The second she left, I finally let out a quiet breath, only to hear someone call my name from behind. "Susan Perry." I turned and saw Keith. I didn't know when he'd arrived or how much he'd heard. Thinking about everything I'd just said to Monica, my face went hot. "Thank you." He stood in the shadows, and I couldn't make out his expression. "You don't have to thank me. I did it for Monica." Keith left before Monica came back. He said she'd probably still feel awkward seeing him right now. Monica stayed at my place that night, then left early the next morning. She said Robert was coming over to her place to meet Keith and have a serious talk. The whole day, she barely replied to my messages. She seemed busy. By evening, I finally saw a post she'd put on her moments 10 minutes earlier. Wow, my brother's cooking is amazing. The photo was of a full table of beautiful dishes. I couldn't help laughing as I liked the post. I left a comment to show support. I'm so jealous I could die. Looked like Keith found Robert acceptable enough as a brother-in-law. 2 minutes later, I got a private message from Keith. Home tomorrow? Me, why? Keith, I'll come cook for you. Dinner never happened. Keith was suddenly called away on an emergency mission. I sat on the couch, staring at our chat history on my phone in a daze. Keith, home tomorrow? Me. Keith, I'll come cook for you. Me, we already broke up. Keith, then this time, let me be the one to chase you. Staring at that last message, my heart started to beat a little faster. I put my phone down, and, against my will, my mind drifted back to the night we broke up. We're incompatible was an incredibly flimsy excuse. But Keith never asked for more. He only asked whether breaking up was really what I wanted. When I told him yes, he nodded. If that's what you want, then I'll give it to you. It was exactly that calm reaction that made me feel, in that moment, that breaking up had been the right choice. Before that day, we'd been like so many other couples. We ate together, watched movies, exchanged gifts on holidays, complained about colleagues and bosses, and shared whatever we thought was fun or interesting. I thought we were a good match. Then one day, while I was chatting idly with Monica, she mentioned what Keith looked like in her eyes. My brother seems to be dating someone, but that relationship looks exhausting, she said. My heart clenched, but I still couldn't help asking, why do you say that? The other person is probably younger, she said. She talks about all kinds of things my brother doesn't know. He has to force himself to keep up with her topics, afraid she'll get upset otherwise. He comes home from missions in the middle of the night, feeling awful, and still has to comfort his girlfriend, who's frustrated about her job. He's in a terrible mood himself, but he puts on a brave face, and she doesn't seem to notice. I just feel like she doesn't like him as much as he likes her. She concluded, full of conviction, they won't last long. Monica's words were like a tiny thorn, slipping silently into my heart. From then on, I started watching Keith's reactions very closely. I'd chatter excitedly about the new anime I was obsessed with, and he would listen patiently until I was done, then smile and say it sounded interesting. But I couldn't help wondering if he was actually completely uninterested. He'd come back from a mission with obvious fatigue in his voice, and still never once complained to me. Meanwhile, after a day of being tormented by clients, I'd unload all my frustration on him over the phone. He would listen quietly and then comfort me in that warm, gentle voice of his. After we hung up, Monica's words would ring in my ears. He's in a terrible mood himself, but he puts on a brave face. I became cautious, almost to the point of paranoia. I didn't dare share things I found fun if I thought he might not understand them. I didn't dare vent my negative emotions at him the way I used to. Every call, every meeting, felt coated in a thin, invisible layer of pressure. I was terrified that my immaturity would become his burden. Terrified that he was only accommodating me out of obligation. That tightness stretched on for over half a month, and I was nearing my breaking point. I even started to think that maybe he'd already grown tired long ago, and was only hanging on out of a sense of responsibility. So, on a seemingly calm night, I was the one who asked for a breakup. After the breakup, I did my best to act like nothing had changed. But sometimes, I couldn't stop myself from opening his profile and scrolling through his quiet moments. I'd piece together scraps about him from Monica's casual mentions. He seemed busy. Everything seemed fine. I thought we would gradually fade out of each other's lives like that. But the misunderstanding at the hospital pushed us back into each other's orbit. And Keith's reaction afterwards left my heart in complete turmoil. I couldn't help wondering, back then, had I trusted my own speculation and Monica's offhand comments far too much, while forgetting to trust him, to simply ask how he really felt? Monica said her brother's relationship looked exhausting, but Keith had never once shown that to me. He had always been tolerant, steady, reliable. What if all those things I took for forced patience and reluctant comfort were just his way of loving someone? I was confused. And beneath that confusion, there was a faint, nagging regret. My phone suddenly buzzed again, cutting off my thoughts. I glanced down. It was a new message from Keith. You know I have a habit of taking silence as agreement. A few seconds later, another. About that breakup reason you gave me, I've never really agreed with it. Susan, I think we're actually a pretty good match. Keith had never pursued anyone before. His way of chasing someone was a little clumsy. Unfailing good mornings and good nights, sent with such precise timing it felt like he'd set an alarm. The content was simple, sometimes with a photo of a sunrise or the night sky attached. He started sharing his life with me. A scrappy wildflower growing stubbornly by the training field, a breathtaking sunset he caught on the way to a mission, a plate of braised pork ribs from the cafeteria that was supposed to be pretty good, moments I hadn't been there for, he captured one by one and sent to me. It felt like he was changing too. Like he was trying to open his life up and let me see it. He knew I loved to eat but had a weak stomach. So somehow, he got his hands on a bunch of stomach-friendly recipes, studied them thoroughly, and on weekends when I was off work, he'd show up at my door with a big bag of fresh ingredients. He'd stand in my kitchen, moving confidently as he prepped the food. He still didn't talk much, but whenever I peeked my head in, he'd hand me a small bowl of soup he'd blown to the perfect warmth, or a little snack, and say the same thing every time. See if the seasoning's okay. That was always his excuse. Over the past half-month, I'd gotten used to his daily messages and found myself unconsciously waiting for them. I'd grown comfortable with his cooking too, so comfortable that I'd started nitpicking that some dish or other could use a little more heat. Just like that, I slipped right back into the habit of having him in my life. That day after work, I saw a flurry of messages in the building's residents group chat. An apartment upstairs, 1308, had been robbed a few days earlier, and they'd lost a lot of valuables. The thief still hadn't been caught, and everyone was on edge. I stood in front of my door, punching in the passcode. Just as I was about to go inside, something in my peripheral vision caught my eye, a strange mark on the white wall nearby. I'd seen videos about this before. Some burglary rings would scout ahead and leave symbols on walls to mark easy targets. I hurried inside and locked the door behind me. Without overthinking it, I sent Monica a message, "Tell your brother to come over and stay at my place tonight." Barely a moment after I sent it, I panicked and recalled it. Monica was pregnant now. If a thief really did show up, I'd have to protect her. But the next second, Monica's reply popped up. "Why'd you recall it?" "I already told my brother. He'll be there soon. Wait for him. I heard about the burglary in your complex. I'm not at ease with you being alone. With two people there, it'll definitely be safer." I quickly typed back, "No need. I'll just go crash at Amy's for a couple of days." "Monica, that's such a hassle. Just wait. He'll be there soon." "He'll be there? He?" Maybe she'd typed the wrong character. Half an hour later, I stood in my doorway, staring at the man in front of me, completely at a loss for words. I left Keith in the living room and hurried into my bedroom to call Monica. "Why is your brother here?" I demanded. "Weren't you going to have him sleep at your place?" Thinking back on the message I'd sent her, I fell silent. A few seconds later, I let out a bitter little laugh. "Do you think it's appropriate for a single man and a single woman to spend the night alone in the same apartment?" Even if my relationship with him wasn't exactly ordinary, we still weren't back to being boyfriend and girlfriend. It was hard not to feel awkward. "So what?" Monica didn't care at all. "You think something's going to happen between you two?" "No way." I blinked. "Why?" "Call it a gut feeling. You two are impossible. Absolutely impossible." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't think of a single solid rebuttal. It left a faint, inexplicable discomfort in my chest. "Relax," she said. "He's my brother, okay? A SWAT officer. With him there, you're safe." I had to admit, that part made sense. When I hung up and went back out, Keith was still sitting on the sofa. He stood when he saw me. "Can I borrow your bathroom to take a shower?" I didn't have time to go home. My dad had stayed here once and left a set of clothes behind. I dug them out and was just about to hand them to Keith when the bathroom door swung open. He stepped out bare-chested, a towel knotted low around his waist, hair still damp. Just like that. He must have been training hard lately. The 8 distinct ridges of his abs were sharply defined, his body annoyingly good. I looked once. Then again. Quietly, I stuffed the clothes I'd prepared back where they came from. I'll toss your clothes in the washer," I mumbled, keeping my eyes down and very carefully not looking at him. "I'll put them in the dryer after. They'll be ready by morning." I tried to walk past him toward the bathroom, but before I could take 2 steps, his hand closed around my wrist. His palm was burning hot. The heat raced up from my wrist, and my cheeks flushed. Startled, I turned my head to look at him. Maybe it was because he'd just showered, but his face was a little red too. "I'll do it myself," he muttered. By the time we were done fussing around, it was almost 10. I had to work early the next morning, so I needed to sleep. Keith settled down in the guest room as well. I lay in bed wide awake. The thought of Keith lying in the room right next to mine chased every trace of drowsiness away. I opened app after app on my phone, but nothing managed to really distract me. Then I refreshed Weibo and came across the alt account of Keith's that I'd followed before. He didn't know I followed him. The newest post was from half a month ago. "I want to win my ex-girlfriend back, but I don't really know how to pursue someone." A bunch of rubbernecking strangers were offering advice in the comments. "Send lots of messages," they said. "Let her get used to having you around. Disappear for a while, some suggested. Make her realize you actually matter to her. Others teased him. Dude, we saw your training photos. With that body, just seduce her. It's the simplest, most straightforward method. And Keith's reply, stamped 20 minutes ago, was, tried it. It works. In the middle of the night, I woke up thirsty. Half asleep, I shuffled out of bed and groped my way toward the living room. I was feeling around for the light switch when I caught a glimpse of a dark figure moving across the room. My heart jumped, and I jolted fully awake. I thought it was Keith and called out, "Why are you up?" But the next second, the shadow lunged straight at me. Terror locked my muscles. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. In that split second, another figure flashed in from behind and to the side, as fast as lightning. There was a dull thud, and the dark shape that had been rushing toward me was slammed to the floor. The whole thing happened in the blink of an eye. I scrambled for the light and flicked it on. Keith was kneeling on one knee, pinning the intruder to the ground with his weight and twisting the man's wrist back in a brutal hold. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. My legs went weak, and I had to brace myself against the wall to stay upright. "You okay?" Keith looked up at me, sharp gaze filled with worry. Only after he'd confirmed I was unhurt did his shoulders finally loosen a fraction. I'm fine. I forced myself to calm down. I fumbled for my phone and called the police. They arrived quickly and took the burglar away. The commotion woke the neighbors, who all came out to see what was going on. Once they understood the situation, they gathered around to comfort me. The auntie who lived across the hall clutched my hand with lingering fear. "Good thing your boyfriend was here. What would you have done all alone, you poor girl?" As she spoke, her eyes dropped to Keith's arm, and she gasped. "Oh, dear, your arm is hurt." I snapped my head toward his right arm. Sure enough, a long, shallow cut was oozing blood. That thief had brought a knife. My heart lurched. I looked up at Keith. "It's nothing. Just a scratch." He smiled as if it really didn't matter, like the wound wasn't even on his own body. After the police and neighbors left and the door closed behind them, the apartment finally went quiet again. I hurried to get the first aid kit and tugged him down onto the sofa. "Don't move. Let me take care of that." Under the light, the streak of blood looked startlingly stark. I soaked a cotton swab with iodine and dabbed at the cut as carefully as I could, my touch feather-light. "Does it hurt?" I couldn't help asking, my voice tinged with a concern I hadn't even realized I was showing. Keith didn't answer. Instead, he let out a soft, inexplicable laugh. I glanced up at him in confusion. "What are you laughing at? You're injured and still laughing?" He lowered his eyes to me, the amusement in them deepening. "I'm happy." "What?" "I'm happy," he repeated, pausing for a moment, his tone filled with quiet satisfaction. "Now I know just how much you care about me." Heat flooded my face, and my hand stilled for a beat. I schooled my expression into a stern one. "This is basic human decency, okay?" He clearly didn't believe me, but he didn't push it further. Once I cleaned the wound and taped on a bandage, I put the kit away. The room fell still, the only sound the faint hum of traffic outside the window. After a brief silence, Keith spoke again, his tone much more serious than before. "Susan." "Yeah? Now, can you tell me?" His gaze held mine, focused and sincere. "The real reason you wanted to break up back then." When I finished telling him everything, Keith didn't speak for a long time. Nervous, I raised my eyes to his face, but there was no anger there, no shock, just a look of sudden clarity mixed with a kind of helpless amusement. He sighed and rubbed his brow. Then he looked at me very seriously. "First of all, from now on, whatever Monica says, especially when it's about me, take it half seriously at most. Second," he went on after a slight pause, his voice solemn, "listening to you talk about things I don't know isn't a burden. It's a chance to get to know your world. I think it's interesting. When I've had a rough day at work and I hear your voice, hear you complaining about all those little annoyances, that's relaxing for me. I'm not faking a smile." He seemed to search for the right words, then continued slowly, "It's feeling like there's someone out there waiting for me, needing me. That feels good. I admit I might not be the funniest or most charming boyfriend. When I get busy, I sometimes forget about your feelings. But I've never felt tired of you, and I've never once thought about breaking up." For someone as terse as he usually was, the stream of words he poured out now felt especially earnest and weighty. I stared at him, my emotions a complete jumble, sourness, relief, and above all a tidal wave of regret and tenderness. So it really had all been in my head. He cared about me far more than I'd ever allowed myself to believe. "So," Keith said, eyes dark and intent on me, "now that you know what I really think, do you still feel we're not compatible?" I held his gaze for a long moment. The last knot in my heart finally unraveled. I shook my head, my voice very soft. "I think we're actually a pretty good match." Keith smiled. He pulled me gently into his arms. "Promise me one thing?" okay? Next time something's bothering you, say it. You have to say it. I nodded. Okay. We didn't say anything more. In the quiet of the night, we held each other tightly. And then, bang! The front door was flung open, followed by Monica's shout. Are you okay? Why didn't you pick up your phone? She stood in the doorway, frozen like a statue. At 1 a.m, the three of us sat in the living room, the atmosphere heavy. Monica sat between Keith and me, silent for a long time. That was terrifying, she muttered at last. Susan, did my brother force you? She turned to me, eyes bright with a kind of hopeful righteousness. If you say he forced you, I'll cut ties with him tonight. A vein throbbed at Keith's temple. Do I look like that kind of person to you? Shut up. For once, Keith actually obeyed and fell silent. Oh. I guess, like me, he was feeling a bit guilty too. I sneaked a look at Monica's expression and gave her my most ingratiating smile. I'm the one who chased him. I'm the one chasing you, Keith countered immediately. I mean, I chased you before, I added. Keith shot back, don't you have work tomorrow? Go to bed. I'll explain it to her. As if I could sleep now. I shook my head. Keith glanced over at Monica and froze. I followed his gaze. Monica was sprawled on the sofa, staring up at the ceiling, her face a picture of despair. How wonderful, she croaked. My best friend turned into my sister-in-law. How wonderful. My brother turned into my best friend's husband. I must be dreaming. I have to be dreaming. Looking at her, I felt a pang of guilt. I think, I said, we need to have a proper talk. I shooed Keith back into the guest room and dragged Monica into my bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed with her back to me, and when I walked around to face her, I saw that her eyes were a little red. It made my chest ache. Monica, I'm sorry. I never meant to keep this from you. I kept wanting to wait for the right moment to tell you, but I hesitated, and somehow, it just dragged on until now. Monica huffed and turned her face away. So I don't count as a real best friend to you. How could you say that? I grabbed her arm. It's because you are my best friend that I didn't dare tell you. I was terrified that what's between me and your brother would affect what's between us. Of course it affects us. She shot me a wounded look. I treat you like my best friend, and you want to be my sister-in-law. I had no idea what to say to that. I just stood there, helpless. Then she added, not that you can't be my sister-in-law. If you marry into our family, you won't have any mother-in-law drama, and there won't be some nasty sister-in-law giving you attitude. I mean, it's you and me, who could ever come between us? And once you're in the family, I'll finally be able to openly rebel against my brother at home. You'll definitely take my side. If you think about it, you marrying him early is a total win for me. I stared at her as she continued analyzing the situation all by herself, completely dumbfounded. Her mood swings were way too fast. But it was a good thing. I threw my arms around her, moved almost to tears. I knew you were the best. Cut it out. Monica poked my forehead. I'll interrogate my brother when I get home. As for you, start talking. I blinked. About what? How exactly did you and my brother end up together? We talked half the night. From the first stirrings of my crush on him to the way I finally worked up the courage to chase him down, I told her every last detail. When she learned that it had taken 8 separate confessions before I finally got her brother to agree to date me, Monica jerked upright, eyes wide. Who does he think he is? Worth 8 confessions? She gritted her teeth. He used to climb walls and skip class, pick fights, talk back to teachers. Now he's grown and he's still insufferably sharp-tongued, has a bad temper, and sometimes he doesn't even shower. Monica. Keith's low warning came through the door. Stop making things up. Monica practically vibrated with rage. She punched at the door a few times, then fell quiet, turned to me, and muttered, the not showering part is a lie. He's actually very clean. I went out and all but dragged Keith back into the guest room. When I came back, Monica was already lying in my bed. Come on. We're not done talking. Oh. She really was set on finishing her interrogation. I gave a wry little smile and lay down beside her. Susan, she said softly, my brother's actually a good guy. I'm really happy you two ended up together. My nose stung, and I rolled over to hug her. Thank you. Monica's tone changed in an instant. If I fight with my brother in the future, whose side are you on? Yours. I burrowed my head into the curve of her neck. Always yours. That's more like it. On the day of Monica and Robert's wedding, I was her bridesmaid, running around with her from morning till night. Watching her in that pure white wedding dress, holding on to Keith's arm as she walked step by step toward Robert, whose eyes were brimming with love, my own eyes stung with tears. Keith placed Monica's hand solemnly into Robert's. The look the two men exchanged needed no words, it was a silent promise and a weighty trust. After the ceremony came the whirlwind of toasts and greetings. By the time I finally managed to catch my breath and slip into the hotel's lounge for a break, I felt like my bones were coming apart. Exhaustion washed over me. I sank into the soft sofa, meaning only to rest my eyes for a moment, and promptly fell fast asleep. I don't know how much time passed before I felt something warm and feather-light brush my forehead. Like a soft plume drifting down, carrying a quiet, soothing warmth. My lashes fluttered, and I slowly opened my eyes. Keith's face was right in front of mine. He clearly hadn't expected me to wake up so suddenly. His movement froze, a rare, flustered look flickered through his eyes, like someone caught red-handed. The tips of his ears went faintly red. The room was very quiet. Only the muffled strains of wedding music drifted in from outside the window. "Did I wake you?" he asked, straightening up. His voice was low, roughened by fatigue. I shook my head. "What time is it? Is the reception over?" "Almost. Guests are starting to leave." He sat down beside me. "You must be exhausted." "I'm okay. My feet just hurt a little." Honestly, seeing him without his SWAT uniform, in a perfectly tailored suit that made his posture even more striking, sent a little sweetness curling through my chest. "You look really handsome today, Captain Brown." He chuckled softly and gave my fingers a gentle squeeze. "You look beautiful too." We were quiet for a moment. I looked out the window. On the lawn not far away, the newlyweds were posing for photos. In the glow of the setting sun, Monica and Robert shared a kiss. I couldn't help sighing under my breath. "Monica looks like such a princess today. She's so happy." Maybe there was a trace of envy and longing in my voice that even I didn't notice. Keith turned to look at me, his gaze deep. Then he called my name, a little nervously. "Susan." I glanced back at him, and froze. Keith had dropped down on one knee beside me. The sight knocked the breath right out of my lungs. My heart started pounding wildly. He carefully took a velvet box from the inside pocket of his suit. When he opened it, a simple yet brilliantly sparkling diamond ring caught the light. "Susan." He lifted his head. In his dark eyes, the evening glow outside the window was reflected, mingling with a solemn tenderness I'd never seen before. "I know this is a bit sudden, and the setting isn't particularly romantic. But I can't wait any longer to ask you, will you marry me?" My mind went completely blank. I was stunned into silence by the suddenness of it all. Tears welled up out of nowhere and blurred my vision. Looking at this man who was always so steady and reliable, and yet clearly nervous in this moment, I thought of everything we'd been through. The vague, budding feelings of our youth, my clumsy confessions one after another, the misunderstanding and breakup, our reunion, and all the little ways he'd pursued me all over again. Every doubt and insecurity dissolved in that instant. I nodded with a smile, my voice breaking into a sob. "I will." Keith took the ring out of the box. His hands were trembling, but his movements were firm as he slid it onto my ring finger. It fit perfectly. He rose to his feet and pulled me tightly into his arms. Outside, the sunset was at its loveliest, and the future was blazing bright.